Hello and welcome to the One-on-One podcast. If you're enjoying the show, consider signing up for the Patreon. There you get ad-free content, early access, exclusive episodes, and monthly supporter hangouts. You can find it at patreon.com/the One-on-One podcast. If you don't like the subscription-based models, there are other ways of supporting the show that are linked in the description. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy this episode.
They said it was forbidden. They said it was dangerous. They were right. Introducing the paranoid American Homunculus Owner's Manual. Dive into the arcane, into the hidden corners of the occult. This isn't just a comic. It's a hidden tome of supernatural power. All original artwork illustrating the groundbreaking research of Juan Ayala, one of the only living homunculologists of our time. Learn how to summon your own homunculus, an enigma wrapped in the fabric of reality itself, their power at your fingertips, their existence, your secret. Explore the mysteries of the Aristotelian, the spiritual, the Paracelsian, the Crowleyan homunculus, ancient knowledge lost to time, now unearthed in this forbidden tale. This comic book holds truths not meant for the light of day, knowledge that was buried, feared, and shunned. Are you ready to uncover the hidden? The Paranoid American Homunculus Owner's Manual, not for the faint of heart. Available now from Paranoid American. Get your copy at tjojp.com or paranoidamerican.com today.
Welcome to the One-on-One podcast with your host, Juan Ayala.
Right, and you were asking about CERN and that they're going to turn it on and there's a ghost in the machine or whatever. I've spent a lot of time looking into particle accelerators. I don't know that I have completely the whole answer or anything like that, but I suspect that there's no someone that is like a person that works at the facility turning it on, not. I think particle accelerators have a mind of their own, and the study has been particle accelerators are angels, right? And there's 144,000 of them, and that this is what's really being talked about when those are referred, and that they're the creator's glory. Like, this is something, they're part of the earth. They're not something that man built, although I think men have tried to build replicators of them or smaller versions. They've certainly been interested in studying them and understanding how they work and trying to copy them and whatever, but that the people are not controlling the particle accelerator. The particle accelerators turn on according to some other set of instructions.
Welcome back to another episode of the One-on-One podcast. Make sure to follow the show on social media at the One-on-One podcast, tjojp.com, chosenjuan.com for issue 2 of the Chosen Juan comic book. All that good stuff. If you're listening to this on the RSS feed, make sure you leave a 5-star review on YouTube, wherever else. Thumbs up, subscribe, share the show. Call in 407-476-4606, 407-476-4606. And today we have a returning guest of the show, friend of the show, Emily Moyer. How are you?
I'm great, Juan, and even better to be back here with you. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. What have you been up to since we last spoke? It's been a little bit since you and I did an episode.
So I'm trying to think about when the last time we did one was. It's been an interesting time. I've been working a lot at my regular, like, other jobs that have nothing to do with this, as well as continuing to sort of produce a lot of content. I feel like I have settled into sort of a different frame of mind about this and that than like I was before. And that has helped me to sort of figure out maybe like next steps, right? Like I feel like I'm kind of coming up on a season here where I'm going to make some decisions, and it's either going to be a lot more time doing this or a lot less time doing this, right? Like I'm kind of at a choice point, but I feel sort of content with whichever way universe recommends I go, right? And so I'm still enjoying doing this. I enjoy all the people I get to work with, and I also enjoy having a fair amount of time doing other things. I think balance is good. I know you work the day job as well, and sometimes that helps to keep all of this in perspective, right? So I'm good. And it seems to be getting warmer, so that's my favorite time of year. I've been spending a lot of time outside, working on the physical body, laying in the sun, right? And all that jazz.
Working on the flesh suit. Yeah.
On a flesh suit. I refuse to believe that it doesn't matter, right? Like for me, I was thinking about this before we got started. Like if I was going to tell anyone to double down on anything at this time, sort of in the show, I don't mean this show, but just whatever this dope show is that we're all in, it would be to double down on the care of the physical body and becoming good at challenging yourself and that kind of stuff. Discipline doesn't necessarily mean you have to be like a person who's in the gym 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But spending, a good amount of time, I feel like this is really important for being able to operate in this external reality that we're all sort of still, sort of subscribed to here. Like, I really think the body's the interface between the inner universe and the outer universe. And we, becoming a master of this, and that means a different thing for everyone else. For everyone, it's not the same. Is really important, and I think some of us get really, and I've certainly been guilty of this at times, get really, really carried away with our information brain and with like knowing the next thing and how many things we can figure out and how many rabbit holes we can go down and whatnot. But the physical body is important too, and I've actually found it to be really useful in sort of helping me navigate and orient said rabbit holes as well, right? My body gives me a lot of information about which way to go with things, and what's important and what's not, and what's working and what isn't, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's an overall fitness kind of thing, and your physical fitness is very much connected to your sort of spiritual, energetic, mental, cognitive, all that kind of stuff, psychological fitness. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing. How about you?
Before we get any deeper, Emily, where can people find you if they want to go find your work?
So you can still like start going down the rabbit hole at my YouTube channel, which is my name, Emily Moyer. I put up a public segment of a show occasionally, and I actually do a live stream with Danny Katz every Wednesday night now called Word Salad. And those are kind of the public things I do now. I do most of my work like behind various paywalls or sometimes free, but on the alternative platforms like Rockfin and Locals and whatever. So you can find me at patreon.com/offplanetmedia, emilymoyer.locals.com, and rockfin.com/Emily Moyer. My website is emilycmoyer.com. That has links to everything, including where to go to work with me if you want nutrition consultation, storytelling services, any of that jazz. If you want to explore rabbit holes together that no one else will dare venture down with you, I'm your girl.
And it's interesting that you're touching on this, because I was having a conversation with somebody today in regards to this whole thing of being in this realm and having that 9 to 5, but that's the thing that keeps you grounded, because if you were to do this full time, it might send you over the edge, right? Like it might, and by the over the edge, I'm talking about like it might drive you insane. I mean, a lot of, because that there's a pattern when it comes to these occultists and these alchemists, where a lot of them, for example, Manly P. Hall, he had figured out the glitch of the matrix, which the glitch of the matrix is actually having a sugar mama that'll just support you and you don't have to work. So therefore you can write all these dope books and travel around the world and learn all these ancient mystery religions and do all this sort of stuff. Now, Manly P. Hall was a little bit of a weird one because I don't think he lost his mind. I do think he was murdered, but I don't think he lost his mind towards the end of his life. But it's interesting that we're touching on this because I was literally talking to somebody before we jumped on about how, I forgot how we got on the topic. We were talking about like if I'm able to achieve all of what I was able have achieved so far with a full-time job, family and everything, imagine if I didn't have that. And let's say I went to jail for a long time, like I'd be right. Those people have the time to just study 24 hours a day if they wanted to, right? They worked at whatever job they have that they're in prison, for, go back to their cell. And it's like, and we made the joke where I was like, that'd be pretty dope actually. Like just like reading,
famous last words.
Not going to jail. Don't go to jail, but it'd be dope to just be able to read. But I'm the kind of person that would enjoy that. Not everybody is. I'm a hermit. So I'm a homebody. I love being at home. I love hanging out. That's just me. I know that you're a little bit different because you did a lot of years of partying and being out there and doing all this stuff. So yeah, but I think that my job maybe keeps me grounded because we go down a lot of these rabbit holes. And what about, because right, we are 3 days away from one of the mega directed energy weapons that you and I have talked about before. What was the directed energy weapon last time? Was it one of the balloons or something? Do you remember it all?
The directed energy weapon is basically your social media feed that is directing your attention unnaturally towards some unrelenting story. I don't remember what it was then. I think it was the directed energy weapons with the Maui fire or something like that. Yeah. Right. I like that you classified this one as a directed energy weapon. Let me respond to what you were saying, because I think one of the things that I have become better and better at is like reflecting on like my behavior, my choices, my actions, those of my friends, my interactions with the people that I'm close with, and sort of seeing how we're sort of mirrors for each other. And I've also had periods of my life where I didn't have any commitments, or at least I opted out of commitments by being an addict. And I was a little bit of a different kind of addict because when I was an addict, I didn't do much partying. Like I might go to a party on Saturday night, but for the most part, I was in my apartment by myself going down rabbit holes. Right. So I wasn't just like doing the thing that most addicts do. Right. I wasn't like out on the street always like that. I was in my apartment on the internet doing the same that you were doing without. Right. But I was able to go for longer. So I had time where like I was just looking at information, but I wasn't really doing anything with it other than just like continuing to like swell the files with information. And then I've had periods of time where like I was working and I was just doing one show, right? Like it was like like when I first started doing this stuff, I had to do a show once a week with Randy and that was it. And then I kind of started doing a little bit more, and then it happened and I was just doing this full time. And then I was able to start to pretty much like, not like a great living, but was able to kind of make a living doing this. And so I spent some time working on that. And then I reached a point where it was like, I was tired of being at the computer and it felt like I was starting to put more and more effort into it for like less and less return on some levels. And I didn't want to get frustrated about that because like, this is a true like information, like truth seeking journey or sort of there's something I'm trying to understand or find out here. And so I don't want it to become too attached to, financial stuff or what other people think of me or any of that kind of stuff. Right. So I decided I wanted to go back and do some other work to take some pressure off of that. And I went back to doing work that turned out to be like really quite challenging, but I liked it. I liked the challenge and very physical. And I started to recognize how useful that was for ironing out the inconsistencies in my own thinking, the difference between what I said and what I actually did, but also starting to take a look at some of the places that we have been walked into as we look for sort of counter narratives or alternative theories on things. At some of these areas that we've been walked into, like just because they're different than the thing we know is bullshit doesn't mean that they actually make sense, are likely, or are true, right? And I started to become much more sort of vicious in like trying to sort out, like, just because I like this version better, or just because this version challenges the mainstream, does that make it any more true than what the lies that they're telling me? And I sort of have, backed away from some. When I say backed away, I don't mean that so much that things that I used to think were true, I now don't think are true, as much as I have recognized that though they may be true, they're not necessarily the point, or like that there's something bigger going on that I can't see, that the conspiracy part, or like the truth that we thought we uncovered about something, it is true, but it was actually fine with them that we uncover that, because while we're uncovering that, we're not paying attention to some other thing that is far less sexy, but much more informative about how this place that we live actually works than, some of the really like juicy rabbit holes we go down. Right. And I just felt like it started to improve my discernment, having that balance of like doing a hard day's work, because my job is hard. Right. And there's different ways jobs can be hard. They can be physically hard. They can be mentally or emotionally taxing because you're working on that was like really important or really matters, like your, brain surgeon or your whatever it is. Other times it's working with difficult people and whatnot. So there's many ways that a job can be challenging, but working hard and coming home and feeling exhausted from that, started to make me like value how I spent this time more, right? And really starting to separate the wheat from the chaff, or like the protein from the chicken feed, or whatever it is, right? And then also just when I'm in that physical labor, for some reason, thinking, like running these scenarios over and over in our mind that we talk about, right? Like for some reason, there was a clarity that was coming about them that doesn't come when we're like sitting here going to the next link, going to the next link, going to the next link, right? Because there's always like another link on the other side of the other link. And so we're always taking more information instead of like, do I really actually completely understand everything I just read? Mm-hmm. Right? Or was I so anxious to like get to the next part that I didn't go, wait a second, there's one thing there that doesn't make sense, and maybe I should try and make that, see if I can get that to make sense before I move on. Or if it doesn't make sense, ask myself, is it worth going on until I either can make sense of it or determine that doesn't make sense, and therefore the next thing won't either, right?
Yeah.
And so I've enjoyed that process, and I feel like, two things could be true. Like, so some people can do this full time, and especially if they're able to balance it with like other endeavors related to their family, or if they have like another creative outlet, or maybe they're into exercise or nature hikes or whatever. And some people can't. For some people, this just becomes like an endless thing of just consuming more and more information, creating longer and longer shows and podcasts, and talking to more and more people that agree with them. And it becomes like a like a self-licking ice cream cone, you know what I mean? Like type of thing. So I think it depends. A circle jerk of self-contained flatulence, where like you're just sitting around smelling your own farts all day, basically, right? So, it just depends on the personality type, like how long they've been doing this, whether they have someone in their near orbit, whether it's a family member, a friend, or someone that they do shows with, who will really honestly challenge their narratives, like in good spirit, but like really press them on that to make sure that they really, what they're saying actually makes sense. And they're just not saying it in a sexy way that's sort of, diluting themselves as well as their audience or whatever it is. Right. So it just depends on the personality type. But I also think when you have a lot of things to do, it causes you to be more efficient, and it causes you to be better at like dismissing things that don't matter and not getting, caught up in them. Right. So I think it just depends. But I do think it's like good. I appreciate that I went through a couple of years where this is all I was doing to sort of understand that experience. And it has made me in some cases have compassion for some of my colleagues, and in other cases have harsh criticism of them, because I can see sometimes like what's going on when the direction of someone's material changes. Sometimes it's because they genuinely have a change of heart, of interest, or they see something different. But other times it's because they've figured out the algorithm or what makes people subscribe or what makes people click. And those pressures are real. So I'm glad I had the experience. And I like having a variety of things to do. And I think you should experiment. I think, I think you should. I think it's good that you've had this early where you're doing all of this while you're also having the responsibilities of a family and working and all of that kind of stuff. But if the scenario in life presents itself where, hey, you get this opportunity, try it and you'll know. I think you have a good amount of self-reflection, right? Kind of thing. And if it's not working for you, then shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
pivot.
But please don't go to jail in order to find out what it feels like to study all day.
No,
right?
I won't be going to jail anytime soon. I was just saying the hermit lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with it. That's all I was saying. But yeah, no. And I think you were either in my head or something today because this is a lot of what we were talking about. And the physical aspect of doing physical labor, it's almost like they say that you retain things better, not only when you write them down, so they're taking us away from writing things down. And also they say that when you doodle, you're able to remember things because you link that something with the motion and the mind that come together and they're able to, I guess, attach, you're able to associate, I don't know, some sort of way. And it makes, instead of, again, just boom, 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 reading, cramming a whole bunch of stuff. And the best ideas, how you're saying, come after you've already processed a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe sometimes even days later or weeks later or months later, where you could be having a conversation with somebody and then it's like click, like, oh, and then it's like a domino effect. Everything that you had read about or whatever it was completely makes sense, or what you think is making sense, right? Because that's one of the things.
I have found no better way to sort of gain either clarity on something that you've been stuck on, or to like have a new realization or an epiphany than exercise.
Because you run a lot, right?
Exercise, dancing, or physical labor. Yeah, I run. I mean, I do a variety of different kinds of exercise, but like I have a lot of really interesting things happen when I'm dancing too, which is exercise, but feels different than running around the trail or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. But there is something about when something can move through your body and make sense to your whole body and not just your brain, it is sensible on a completely different level. Like that's like part of the process for me of helping to be able to explain what I mean or what I understand to someone else so that they can understand it and care about it. The care about it doesn't necessarily mean that they think it's as important as I think it is, but it means that like I can explain it in a way that they understand why it's important to me or why I think what I do. And I don't think we understand what we're talking about until we can get someone else of reasonable intelligence to understand what we're talking about. And so the moving it through it's in my head, then I move it through my body, and then I'm able to speak it out of my mouth in a way that is coherent and I can receive feedback from others.
And you were in my head today because I was talking to somebody, again, the same person, and we talked for like 3 hours today, and we were talking about alternative history and flamenco's new chronology. We were going down that rabbit hole. We were talking about, I think his name was John Hardwin in the 18th century, that was questioning history and what we've been presented as history, and how a lot of times these concepts, I'm going to be doing a show here soon on it, where these theories that come out, people use them to further along other theories that have sometimes even nothing to do with the main theory to begin with. And it's like you can tell when people have actually read into something when they haven't. And the reason I stumbled across this again, Anatoly Fomenko's new chronology, is because I've been doing a lot of shorts. So I'm in a period right now where I'm pivoting my content creation, trying to grow my social media, trying to do something a little bit different. And I've been like blitzkrieg a lot of ideas and concepts that I've covered on the show, but being able to break them down in 200 to 250 words or less, which is a lot more difficult than you might think.
Very difficult.
It's very hard because we're used to this long format just going on and on and on. But it's like, explain it to me like I am 5 years old or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Explain it to me like I was, and that's challenged me to be able to write these scripts that are at max 230 words. Cause if now you go over, you can't post it. And it's very difficult. You go, damn. And so I'm going through all these different topics and I'm like, I'm revisiting old topics that I've talked about before, trying to find the key points. I'm like, this is really interesting. I want to do an episode on this. Oh, this is also really interesting. And I'm learning new things too, but I'm doing it in a way where, because all of social media, obviously you have to convert people to either want to subscribe or do whatever, right? It's just the nature of the beast if you want to grow your audience. Some people don't want to grow their audience. I mean, it's all up to you, but a lot of people are fried. I mean, sometimes even us, we're probably fried, right? And the regular user on social media has the attention span. I mean, you see the retention. If you look at the analytics, it's like 2 seconds. You have 2 seconds to reel somebody in, to reel them in, right? With a reel. Yeah. And if you don't, they're gone. So people are so overstimulated that they're just constantly boom, 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 boom. You know what I'm saying? They're just that their attention span for dopamine, you have 2 seconds. If you're not, they move on to the next one. So again, there's a way to go about it, but yeah, I just been hitting all these different topics and I'm like, that's really interesting. And today I was talking to this person about Anatoly Fomenko, Tartaria, all these alternate histories that, how you're saying, because they're alternative doesn't make them true because of everything we've been presented in the mainstream, because some people are just like that too. I mean, they want the alternative stuff just because it goes against the mainstream. It's like, well, what's the difference between your theory and the other theory that the government is telling you one is true and this other one some dude on YouTube told you was true?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think like this is, something doesn't become true or not true based on who is presenting it, right? Like sometimes people who we completely don't like or disagree with are right about something, and that we don't like them doesn't make them not right. And sometimes someone who is our favorite person ever or our most reliable source or whatever, every once in a while they get something wrong, and it's not wrong because they said it, right? So there's kind of this process of like, having to remove a little bit of the emotion from the attachment to the stories or the narratives or the ideas or whatever. And sometimes like, we get really fired up about, everyone has like sort of some topics that interest them and some that don't. And then within the topics that interest them, like a few that they get really fired up about, whereas some of the others they can kind of be more level-headed about. And then one or two that they're like, they get triggered if someone challenges that or disagrees with them or whatever it is, right?
What do you mean homunculus aren't real? You can't tell me homunculi aren't real.
Is that right?
They're
right,
real.
Right.
They're very real. I'm standing up for homunculi rights. I'm going to LGBTQH. Okay,
that's
for homunculus.
I believe it. You don't have to worry about convincing. That's the only thing I still believe in. Anywho, but right. So when we have this, what I notice is when we get around the information, not the information necessarily that we get like excited or brings us joy and like expanding our intellect or knowledge around, but the stuff that gets us like real fired up inside, right? Sometimes when we get real excited, especially if it's around something we perceive that is wrong with the world or something that is around what we wish to be true around the world, right? Then at a certain point when we get too excited, we stop thinking clearly. And past that point, like our body releases some kind of like neurochemical or hormone or whatever. And from that point until we come back to calm and remain that way for a period of time, we're no longer actually like really thinking clearly and discerning with our highest mind, right? And I think unfortunately, sometimes we do a lot of, we spend some time there and we assume that the leaps we make when we're in the excited state or the information we find when we're sort of in that space, that is well thought out or that is well assessed. And it isn't always. And also something can be true, but it can be true. It can be true simultaneous to something else being true and not instead of something else being true. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a few topics that people get really emotional about, right? And they get stuck. They can't ever move past that. Really. Everything starts to rotate around that, right? That's like the linchpin of the way they arrange everything else around it. And it's generally like, I can say that there's like 3 to 5 main topics that people tend to get stuck at, right? And all of them prevent you, in my opinion, all of them prevent you from like assessing the environment around you in a way that allows you to understand what is actually going on.
SighOps, dare I say? I don't know. So
SIGH, not another one. SighOps.
I like that one. So yeah. I'm gonna write that one down. Actually, SighOps. So, right? What do you think about? Or because we're talking about topics that are so my entire comedy set was about Homunculus, and it's interesting because one of the comedians after the show, after I got off stage, he was like, bro, what made your set so good was that nobody knew what the fuck you were talking about. Right? So like nobody knew what it was, but like I was giving them again that lowdown, like boom, this is what this is, boom, boom, boom. And I had people after the show ask me questions like, was that real? And I was like, oh baby, it was all real. Like my entire thing, because that's how ridiculous history is, that you can make it, it's literally a joke. Like it's literally an entire joke. So people were so intrigued and they're like, even the one bit with you, I was like, even that one bit was real, right? So like I was like, I tell no lies up here. I tell only truth with a capital T. And what are your thoughts on informational entities, how information perhaps is a living organism? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it was part of my conversation today, which honestly I should have probably recorded because it was pretty good. And did a conversation happen if it didn't happen on a podcast? No.
Danny and I asked the same question in our podcast, right?
No, it didn't. And
if there's no one in the audience, are we actually talking, right?
So this alternative history, this fabricated history of how John Hardwin was talking about how a lot of Roman and Greek texts were actually forged and created by Benedictine monks. And I brought it up in conversation because I'm like, we have a lot of talk of God's chosen people. We have a lot of talks of bloodlines. We have a lot of talks of different concepts of these are the people. Are they reptilians? Are they draconian? Are they the Merovingians? Are they related to, I did my last episode was on chimeric bloodlines of like these bloodlines that are half human, but also half something else. What's that other half? We don't know. So this idea of if they were able to think about that, because I said, dude, that makes no sense to me, because if all of history is fabricated, then the people who fabricated the Greeks, the Romans, and everything else, ancient Egypt, they fabricated entire cosmologies. Who came up with the Pythagoreans? Who came up with Plato's Republic? Who came up with all these other things? I was like, they were geniuses. And he goes, you nailed it. They are geniuses. The true people that are in power are genius. And I'm not talking about we're talking about those are
saying I'm not a genius. What the fuck, dude?
no. But you get what I'm saying? And that's why they're in power, because they're able to fabricate. Essentially, that's the manipulation of reality. So, and that's why I was saying, I was like, listen, that's why information itself, it can be, I forgot where we got it, but that's why I talked about something about, we were talking about the Box Saga. And I don't know if you know about the Box Saga, but essentially it's about dudes sucking their own seed. And he was relating that to a whole bunch of other things. He's like, well, listen, there is information there is the concept of when a woman has your in her, she transforms biologically. So if a dude is sucking his own or the of all his homies and taking that one, the cosmic shot, if you will, right? Not to be crude, but the whole load, he's like, right. Maybe, yeah, he was receiving some sort of enlightenment. It was a shot to the back of the dome, and he was being enlightened because of all this informational pool that was being absorbed at one time. So it takes the Illuminati to a whole nother level, because they were probably enlightened, and they were probably getting it from some extracurricular source, right? The illuminated ones, if you will. But what are your thoughts on that, informational entities? And I know I said a lot, but yes.
So you said a lot of things, but okay. So let's first let's start with the informational, the homunculus and the informational entities, and then we will tackle the relation of history and reality of the geniuses, whether they're Jewish or not, and then we'll tackle the cosmic. How's that? Okay. Okay. So I'm reading now this book by Robert Temple called The New Science of Heaven, right? And it was, somebody told me to go read this because we're starting to talk about plasma quite a bit, right? And he is talking about these like giant plasma clouds that exist sort of between the Earth and the moon that are like enormous, right? And that these are sort of like electrical plasma clouds that have like basically all of this information stored in them, and that they're also sort of like shape-shifting in terms of like, because the particles that they're made up of are not complete, they don't stay in the same shape or position. So they're kind of like self-transforming. They're moving and changing all the time, right? And so it's kind of like the same different formations are able to be made up of the various different particles, and that takes the information and presents it in different ways, type of thing, right? I'm just early on into the book, right? But it's like this idea that there's a layer of plasma intelligence somewhere like that's huge, basically covering the whole sort of atmosphere, right? And yeah, so like maybe that's the thing that they call like the Akasha, right? Or whatever it is. And so in some ways what they're saying is above us, there's a homunculus. So we have a homunculus, man has this homunculus in their mind. And then the universe also has a homunculus or various homunculi, these sort of gathered fields of thought or information, right? Or like self-transforming information fields that are out there that maybe when we have like sort of these divine aha moments, we're connecting with, right? Where we're like receiving a download from that, or we're offering an upload, right? Because what I was talking about before about the importance of the fitness of the body and health and all that kind of stuff. Like one thing I realized really early on when I started to sort of expand the way I thought about things was that there's the external reality, and then there's your internal reality. And the membrane between that is our body. And every time we breathe out, we're sharing information that comes from inside of us with the external environment. It is processing it and doing whatever it does with it. And we are also taking in information from the external field, and it's going into our system and circulating around and generating a new field. And it's this constant sort of conversation in and out, and how good of a job you're able to do at processing all of the external stimuli that comes in. Like that's where the importance of the health of the body and fitness, mental, physical, all that kind of stuff comes into play, right? So yes, I think there is varying degrees of informational entities. They're the external homunculi. They're the homunculi of the universe, right? We also have them inside of ourselves and whatnot, right? We have our own sort of like thought palace, you know, in a mind city. We've talked about this before with a governor in there who has all the ideas of his own that have been stored there or whatever it is. But everything that is true inside of us is true outside of us as well on this sort of more grand scale, right?
So I think you tapped my phone. There's no way that we're talking about the same things I was literally talking about. But these plasma entities, there is a new theory or something that came out recently that ball lightning is actually sentient and has some sort of consciousness. So mysterious floating blobs of light known as ball lightning might simply be hallucinations caused by overstimulated brains. A new study suggests for hundreds of years, eyewitnesses have reported brief encounters with the Gulf ball to tennis ball size orbs of electricity. Crowley wrote about ball lightning, and also we were talking about overstimulation and how people are being fried, and the whole demon face syndrome that came out recently where people are seeing distorted faces, and it's a phenomenon. So it's like it just happens for a few days or a few weeks or however long. I personally think it's a symptom of, you know what, but and they're just trying to cope with it like, hey, it's a phenomenon. You and I have talked about synesthesia before, where people are seeing numbers or seeing colors or seeing all these different things. And so this came up, and let me see from when this article is. This is from actually 2010. So, but my friend told me that there was some new discoveries recently. Let me see if I can find that. But yeah, these plasma entities and how I have Joseph Farrell's book on the angels and plasma entities and all that stuff. And so, yeah. I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that I think that there's probably, like, our body is sort of a collection of information and intelligence. And I think it's entirely possible that there are other bodies of information that don't have as dense of a membrane as we have. That sort, right? They don't have as much of a defined suit. It's a little bit more like blobby, right? It's kind of like, it's different. Like Joseph Farrell also talks about like this large plasma field that is the same thing that Robert Temple is talking about sometimes. But he talks about plasma physicists who've done experiments where they realized that when they were poking and prodding at some of the plasma, that they were disturbing, like that the plasma felt it. Like it had sentience. It had the ability to physically sense pain. And so they didn't want to continue doing that because they realized they were hurting it the same way if they poke and prod you, right? So, I think there's other ways that information, like we're used to talking about information sort of gathering or storing as it has to do with like the internet or collecting like, articles or books or whatever.
Yeah.
But really we are a collection of codes and information, and there's different ways those things can be stored, moved, arranged, rearranged, transformed, shared with other things. And I think that's both like exciting and for some people a little bit terrifying, right? Like I think that whenever we're on the precipice of understanding something new, the best way to not be overwhelmed by it is to be like really centered in yourself, like to really understand and know who you are, because then you feel less threatened by whatever everything else is, right? And so when we're not in alignment with ourselves, things that are outside of our normal frame of reference feel scary or disturbing. But when we're cool with ourselves, things that are outside of our normal frame of reference are interesting or exciting or cause for wonder or something to talk about or whatnot. So the ability to be able to manage what I think is going to be coming in terms of like all of this. I think a lot of this stuff has always been here, but it's kind of like, I don't even know if this is true or not, but you know how they always say that like the Indians couldn't see the Pilgrims coming because they had no concept of the ship.
Yeah.
Right. So there's lots of stuff that has been here, but like we can't even see it because we don't have a frame of reference for it. And there has been sort of a collective upgrade in terms of the things that we're willing to open our minds to that has created a scenario where what it seems like something new is starting to seep through, where what it really is we're starting to be able to render with our eyes that which has always been there. And right?
There's so much. And I think there's a freaking ice cream truck right outside my window. But let the sound show commence. Right. So yeah, I think ice creams are like $7 now or something like that. But the thing hot right now, right? I mentioned directed energy weapons earlier. We have the eclipse coming up, and then also CERN is firing up too. And I did a thing on the ghost particle that they found allegedly within the collider. This thing that is able to interact, that is 3D and 4D all at the same time. This
Yes.
I don't know if it's conscious or not. I mean, obviously, if they're putting this out, they probably know a lot more than we do. But it's kind of sort of what you're saying. This plasma that's being poked and probed, and it's making me wonder: was the Philosopher's Stone suspended energy? Were the alchemists, right? The homunculus. Maybe the homunculus represents something else. It represents one of these entities, maybe encapsulated in this little body. So, and it would make a lot of sense because homunculi they know everything, and they knew everything because of the process of alchemy. So they could divinate, they could tell you the future, they could do all weird things because they came from source, from whatever that, you know what I'm saying? So they were supernatural. They were a form of cryptid. I mean, that's essentially what it is. And now you're talking about this and the poking and prodding of these plasma entities. Like, is this what CERN is trying to do? Are they trying to release this demon from, right, the ghost in the machine, quite literally? Or like, are they trying to open up the floodgates? Will we see a portal come 4/8 when I'm going to release this episode? At least to my members, it'll be out public the week after. But are we going to see a portal, Emily? Are we all going to get sucked into a black hole opened up by CERN? What is happening?
Okay. So they're just okay. So it's a lot of things, and I still also want to go back to the geniuses that are able to manipulate history and the cosmic shot. But now you've also brought particle acceleration.
I'll shut up.
All that. Okay. So let's start with the geniuses that manipulate reality, and then we'll go cosmic shot, and then we'll go what CERN and particle acceleration and what is really happening with these sort of like, are they dark energy? Is it dark matter? Is it a demon? Like, yes. What is it? Okay. All right. These are the things I think about all the time. All right. So basically what I think the people who are able to manipulate history or reality, what it really is just getting other people to see things from your perspective. Right. And convincing them that is so. Right. Or on the flip side, getting people to just think that you know more than them. So just letting you be in charge of that. Right. But essentially, the master manipulators are able to convince everybody else that what they think is so. Right. On some level. OK, so imagine it like you're in some big room that has something in the middle. And up higher, there's like a walkway where you can walk around and observe it from all these different angles, right? You can kind of observe it from up above, 10 degrees to the right, 10 degrees to the left, 20 degrees to the right, 20 degrees to the left, come down to eye level, go underneath it, look up at it, right? Like you can see it from the most different perspectives. Like we have this reality that we all seem to sort of share, right? And we are able to, for most of us, we're only able to see it from within our own experience. We can maybe take ourselves to different locations or put ourselves in different frames of mind or whatever it is. But the people who are able to literally see things through, like from the most different perspectives or through the widest variety of lenses or whatever it is, are generally able to see something more total and more coherent than the people who are just able to see something from one angle, right? Like, have you ever, like when you look at something from up above, you can see why someone's having a problem with something down below that they can't see because from their angle, right? And one of these things is, and this is why, and I've gotten into some of this with Thomas, and I think you and I have talked about this a little bit before, right? But I do think that there is some of what philosophers and alchemists do is figure out how to see things from the most number of angles. And this has to do with like light angles and photons to the extent that they exist in the way that we've been told. I think they might be something else. And some of this would be like when someone who doesn't have sort of the philosophical or informational training to understand what they're looking at, when they suddenly see something from a different angle, we tell them that they're schizophrenic or that they have multiple personality disorder or that they're crazy or that they're having an episode or whatever it is. But this sort of ability to see things from all of the different angles and we're talking about CERN, so we're talking about the God particle, right? Like I think the God particle might be some kind of like crystal ball that has the most number of divots, and each divot sort of like arrays the world from a different angle type of thing. Almost like a disco ball has all those different mirrors, and like each mirror is an eye on like viewing reality differently. So I think the genius mind encompasses like what we've been trained to think of as psychosis, and they're allowed to have it and be called a genius. And when the common person who doesn't understand how to compartmentalize that and then articulate certain aspects of it, they're called crazy. Because I'm sure we've all had the experience of like listening to the crazy person on the corner saying all the same things that you and I say on our YouTube show, but they're about to get locked up into a mental institution and you're trying to get more subscribers on YouTube, right? Like it's that same, that kind of thing. So one of the things is, so I think some of this gets into, right? And literally people's eyes. Right? Like I literally think some people's eyes can see things from more angles. It's like having a crystal with more facets, and that doesn't make them, this is not a hierarchical thing where like, because somebody can see better, that makes them better person or more important or anything like that. We just haven't been told the truth about this, or we don't understand this. And so if we did, then we could, know the right context to place all of that in. So one of the things that they have figured out, and I learned this from Alison McDowell, like I've been really interested in schizophrenia and how it like mind control and projects and how it relates to eyes and the irises of the eyes and central heterochromia and like mapping the eye out and whatnot. But she sent me an article that was talking about fat lipids in the eyes and how they correlate to schizophrenia, right? So if literally like schizophrenic people see and think things are there supposedly that are not there, right? That's the story we're told. But what if it really is that like whatever is in their eyes is allowing them to see something that is outside of our regular spectrum? So the thing is there, right? We just can't see it. So they think we're crazy because there's something there and we're all ignoring it. And we're telling them that they're crazy because they think someone is coming and we're like, there's nothing there. Right. And if the correlation between what we call crazy and fat deposits in someone's eyes, because there's questions about whether what comes first, the schizophrenia or the fat deposits, like it's not clear yet. There's studies going on and whatnot. Right. But my guess would be...
Is it fat deposits in the brain or the eyes?
It's lipids in the eyes.
That causes schizophrenia?
It's correlated.
Okay, okay.
Correlation is not causation.
Okay, gotcha.
But so think about this though, right? So like, so if somebody has got, if their eyes like have something in them that is making them see something that we can't see, right? We're not really studying whether that thing is there or not. We're just diagnosing them. And so part of, and I don't think this is the only thing like that. Although there's the reason like the eyes have it is not there for no reason. Right. But there's probably things in the way our ears are formed or different parts of our bodies that have us perceiving that external information field that I talked about differently than other people whose bodies are different, right? So we're talking about, you mentioned like hybrids, chimeric bloodlines and things like that. And oftentimes we're thinking about this as like a racial purity thing, or this person is from a wealthy family and they all have red hair and green eyes or whatever the fuck it is. Right. And we've been taught to think of this as something really external. But if it really is that they know that there's something in their that either, and this doesn't even have to correlate to money and power or control or anything like that. It can just be like, we're a unique group and we see the world a unique way and we want to continue that. And so we are careful not to mix it with something that weakens that. Or there's also arranged marriages or alchemical marriages, which is putting two things together to create a special effect or to enhance or to create something new. Like, I think the alchemists really understood that. It's like they understood that some of us are these sort of meat suits walking around with certain combinations of different elements, some on the periodic table and some yet to be discovered, that when mixed with some other things, certain things happen. And we've been mind controlled into thinking that the only, like, you know, all that stuff is like, or some weird royal bloodline thing, and they're like making monsters that eat. Then I'm not saying that none of that is true. I'm not saying that, right? But if you want people to not be interested in understanding that, you'll make them think that the consequence of all that stuff is three-headed and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. I'm just saying there is so much about how our own minds and bodies work and how they interact with the external reality that we don't understand, right? It's entirely possible that what people are like I do think this, we're the highest technology there is. We're like this thing that like processes light and sound at the most, you know, a very, very rapid pace, and in a way that allows us to like compartmentalize what we're focusing on for right now so we can arrange things in order and complete something and whatnot. And we've become, unfortunately, shrunk down into this one sort of linear thing, but our potential is more omnidirectional. And once we understand like how all of this stuff works and what you're talking about with this whole like ball lightning and information fields and can something be 3-dimensional and 4-dimensional at the same time? Once we sort of get over the programming that we've had and start to allow ourselves to interact with things in a way where we don't assume that we know what something is already just because we've been told since 3rd grade or whatever it is, but we're actually observing our own interactions with something and using that data to try and figure out like what is happening in the moment, we're going to get a lot farther. And it's going to take us outside of our regular perceptions of space and time, in my opinion. And we're going to be able to move through fields of information and layers of reality at increasingly unusual ways, and increasingly, when I say fast, I don't mean we're speeding. I just mean like we can pop in and out. Like it is not going to be any longer this really challenging thing to get from here to there. We're going to learn how to resonate with something and somewhere else or something else, right?
Quick pit stop. This is something I'm going to be doing a show on, and you just kind of reminded me about the schizophrenic deposits of fat. You know, that whole connection there. And this just came out on Netflix today. It's based on an anime that they did a motion picture of it. The whatever it's motion picture, I guess. When unidentified parasites violently take over human hosts and gain power, humanity must rise to combat the growing threat. So it's about, again, this parasite that, and here you can see it manifesting out of her head, and they do a whole bunch of stuff, and it's almost like having a Pokemon in a sort of way. But I'm going to be doing a show on this, and it just reminded me of that, how, what if it's this sort of thing? What if it, you know, we had the Last of Us show come out too with the fungal zombies, and we have the whole cannibal collective going on, and that was in the news as a directed energy weapon thing. And so just interesting. And I Googled, has anyone ever touched ball lightning? Because we're talking about, are those things there? And okay, they're just treating the symptoms, but we didn't go back to the original question of what they're seeing is actually there or not. So as of writing this, ball lightning is not well understood or even accepted as a real phenomenon by many scientists. This is 2020. Yes, there have been numerous accounts of people being not only injured but also killed. So is ball lightning real or is it not? What's going on? Because I've seen videos of it. I could have sworn I've seen a couple videos on ball lightning. Like Aleister Crowley. Said dazzling fire, apparently. But so even he wrote about it as a globular electricity during a thunderstorm in New Hampshire. So is it real? Is it not real? Are ball lightning fake and gay? Can somebody
I know some fake gay guys that are definitely real. Right?
So, and it's interesting because I've never been able to prove this, but I stumbled across one time because we're talking about information, the overloading of information, maybe perhaps the devil's in the ink, right? Where this information might pop up out of these books and run around, right? Who knows? But I read one time and I tried to confirm it, like many things that I've tried to confirm before. Like, hey, when you see like this really juicy piece of information, you're like, that sounds really dope. I want to talk about that. I wonder if it's true. I saw that if you take all the information available on the internet and you put it together, which I'm sure there's a way to do this, it becomes they called it a biblio-homunculus. So all the information becomes a sort of living entity. But the only place I saw that was in that piece of text that I saw it, and I didn't find it anywhere else. So it's like, is information, maybe that's the Akashic Records, how you said, maybe the Akashic Records is the mind of God, and you're able to tap into that. Maybe some people with their bloodline are able to tap into that. It seems like certain people, they live their lives trying to be okay in the eyes of God, have a sort of connection to God, all while wanting to enjoy the pleasures of this realm. If you get what I'm saying, right? Because like one of my jokes was the alchemists, the rabbis created the first dolls, the first fleshlights. They were golems. They're golems. Okay. But when they were accused of it, essentially it's like, no, this pussy's kosher. Like it's okay because God didn't create it. I did. So it's like a loophole in the system. It's like, no, you can't have your cake and eat it too, bro. It's like you're either committing a sin or you're not. You're either gay or you're not gay. Like you have to pick. You can't be in the middle. You know what I'm saying?
The book I was reading this morning, The New Science of Heaven, he was talking about having your cake and eating it too as an analogy for being this and that simultaneously on some level, right? So yeah, we're all, I guess we're all involved in the same circle jerk here right now, right? Okay, I want to cosmic shot, okay? So one of the things that I think, and I've talked about this like quite a bit, but, we live in a reality where in some way the control system is very interested in collecting our bodily fluids, whether that's urine.
One more thing before you go, Emily.
Yeah.
One more pit stop because I wrote it down.
Yeah.
You were talking about, I think, right, seeing the angles on things.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's going to relate to the cosmic shot because Superman, sperm, has the word sperm in it. So Superman has sperm in it. So sperm man. Yeah. And the diamond, that represents Superman, and this is why TT's her books are so powerful, and where we're talking about what I've dubbed cosmic spatial palaces to avoid people, right? The walls have ears. This concept of being able to enter depending on how the light is looking at it. And tomorrow I'm going to visit Galt's Landing with Jim Gale here down the road from me. We're going to be doing a in-person podcast, and right, Galt's Landing, Atlas Shrugged, that whole thing where they disappeared to that other realm, perhaps in Colorado, wherever it was. The place where that cut of diamond, the archetypical diamond cut, is where the Bloomberg building is built. Now, if you've read Genuflect, there's the collection of bodily fluids in that book, and that's in that district is where that cut was invented, and the cut is that cut because it refracts light or reflects light the most. Yes.
This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like God particles and, right, this kind of stuff. So I've been reading, I go through phases where I return to reading the book and then stop for a while. But everybody, like, I would recommend that those who want to know what might really be going on with the royal family right now, take a look at Tracy's book, because I think that like the cover stories we're hearing are in regards to something that may be going on in the background that more closely matches that than the nonsense we're being told. Yes. So basically, like, I think our bodily fluids are like an ancient version of like a thumb drive that has all the files on it and stuff like that, right? So we live in this reality where people are interested in collecting our bodily fluids, and like we've been tricked into easily giving them blood drives, donating plasma
for movie tickets.
So college have money to drink beer on the weekend, right? Like, spitting in cups or taking nasal, whatever, giving your hair sample, all of this kind of stuff. And they're able to come up with these logical reasons why we should do it, right? But like essentially, we've been just donating that. And, some things that you can do with technology and like lab sciences and stuff like that, the old fashioned way to do it was just for drinking someone's blood or having sex with that person so that there can be either a transfer of information or a coming together of algorithms to produce some super string of ideas or whatever it is, right? There's all these ways to sort of just to look at this. And angles have to do with light and geometry and architecture, all of these Pythagorean palace types of ideas and geometry, non-Euclidean, Euclidean, linear, nonlinear, all this kind of stuff. So angles of light coming in and the way that we perceive things, but also the way we think about things, right? Like we generally, have our perspective. And we, if we end up in a scenario where someone's telling us we're wrong, we understand what their perspective is because their perspective is usually the opposite of ours if they're really invested in telling us we're wrong. We may have a buddy to the right or a buddy to the left that mostly agrees with us except for one or two things. So like we're looking at it, we can go, okay, I can sort of see it from your angle. That doesn't too much offend my perception of reality. So I'm willing to consider that to the right and that to the left. But very few of us have perfected the ability to circle the room, right? To really allow ourselves to, even if we don't agree, fully take in what that would look like if we accepted someone else's premise or whatever it is. And I think these high magicians, these high-level alchemists that have discovered the Philosopher's Stone and all of that kind of stuff, they have become masterful at doing that. So they have the full field of information, not just their preferred narrative. Now, once you understand the full field of information, you have to decide what to do with it. And some people have decided to use that information to advance their standing in reality. Others have decided to quietly carry on and not let anybody know that they're there, with that knowledge, and just kind of maybe they do some good works or whatever. And they've decided.
Great work.
Right. Maybe they've decided that, it's everybody has to come into this on their own. And I am robbing someone of their own discovery if I just go out there and tell everybody. You have other people who decide that they figured something out and they need to go blab it to everyone. And sometimes they tell people who are not yet in the place to be able to understand it and wield that information or that power sort of responsibly. And so they end up being the one to advance their own position with that.
It's like when you're a kid and then you start learning about all the drama in your family, all the secrets that, growing up, they wouldn't tell you because you were a kid. And then things start to really add up when you're being, when you're told already as an adult, like, oh, that's why that was like that. It's like those sort of revelations, obviously not the same. We're talking about secret society-esque, mind-bending, reality warping information, but kind of sort of that warps your reality as a kid.
Where I'm at with this is I have figured out for myself that I receive more information when I'm ready to deal with what the implications of that is. And sure, sometimes it's frustrating because we want to know. We're all anyone who's here listening to you and I are curious and we want to know, right? But I also know that when I gorged myself on information before I was ready for it, and sometimes found myself in some places online where I was taking in information that was like really damaging to my heart, to my consciousness, whether it was true or not, like it paralyzed me, right? And sometimes I just ignored it. Sometimes I did something irresponsible with it. Sometimes I tried to be irresponsible with it or whatever it is. But, at this point where I'm at, I feel like the next thing comes to me when I'm ready for what that means and to be responsible with that information. And as far as like what the powerful people are doing with it, like I don't know that it's anyone's responsibility to tell everyone else how the world really works.
Yes.
But what I don't like is this like intentional deception and this intentional diversion.
Gatekeeping.
Right. Or lying. Right. You don't have to tell everyone everything. You don't have to go like, and this goes for everything, right? You don't have to like spread your business all over the place or whatever, but to actively deceive or block someone who is earnestly trying to learn when they're ready, like that, I have a problem with, right? Like that's where the issue is. You know, and that's how I feel right now. There was a time when I thought like everybody should get to know everything. They should just like blank slate, just like let the truth out about everything. And I'm not opposed to that, right? Like I would not stop that from happening, but I'm not interested in gatekeeping. You know what I mean? But I understand how like maybe we've all, sometimes when somebody tells you a secret, instead of keeping it, you run around and tell the next person because you know that person's going to think you're cool for telling them, right? And like some of these secrets, because literally like we're talking about, and it's funny because this is going to sound so stupid, we're literally talking about nuclear secrets. And by that, I don't mean like you have the code to the football, but there's a huge connection between and power, right? You know where the most amount of DNA is in the body? It's in the nucleus. And
what part of the body is that?
The nucleus of a cell has the most genetic information in it. And I don't think DNA is what people think it is, right? Like, I don't think DNA is like, some people think you can't find DNA in the body. The same way, like, people don't think that their viruses exist. That DNA is like something that is like a broadcast or a transmission that exists momentarily, right? But it's information.
Whoa.
It's information. And the
who came up with that? So DNA, because that's an interesting concept of like, did they see it in a micro? Because I never even thought about that. So DNA, the double helix, right? Because that's the whole thing, like the double.
Most DNA is located in the cell nucleus. Now, I just want to be really clear here. I am not saying that we should believe or buy into what the scientismists are telling us, right? But I have found sort of that there is a rhythm to the encoding of information that can be oftentimes quite revelatory, right? So we talk about the nuclear family. We talk about nuclear power. We talk about things like God particles and the atomic secrets. And so why is there all the same language about that which is small and inside our body and that which is this huge power that has the capability of like destroying the world or saving the world if we're using nuclear power, right, for clean energy, right? Like all of this kind of stuff. There is an undeniable connection between the power inside and the power outside, right? And you were asking about CERN, and that they're going to turn it on and there's a ghost in the machine or whatever. So I've spent a lot of time looking into particle accelerators. I don't know that I have completely the whole answer or anything like that, but I suspect that there's someone that is a person that works at the facility turning it on, not. I think particle accelerators have a mind of their own, and the study has been when the particle accelerator.
And it's Atlas too, so Atlas Shrugged. Remember we're talking about that.
Right. Oh, by the way, you were talking about that. Do you know that Ayn Rand was living in Chatsworth, which is where I'm from, when she wrote Atlas Shrugged? It's my belief that she's really talking about Chatsworth. Okay, so I think that I enjoy the work of FPV Angel and the Angelic Particle Matrix Group team. I don't know if everything they say is right or not. They use a lot of Walter Russell.
Angelic what?
The Angelic Particle Matrix. That's the name of their work, but FPV Angel is the YouTube channel. And they've done like the most amount of looking into particle accelerators, of anyone that I know.
Are they still around?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they post a lot of new material right now because life, right? But like I've learned a lot about particle accelerators. And so in their narrative, particle accelerators are angels, right? And there's 144,000 of them, right? And that this is what's really being talked about when those are referred to. and that they're the creator's glory. Like this is something, they're part of the earth. They're not something that man built, although I think men have tried to build replicators of them or smaller versions. They've certainly been interested in studying them and understanding how they work and trying to copy them and whatever, but that the people are not controlling the particle accelerators. The particle accelerators turn on according to some other set of instructions, right? And because you think about like why, it's they always make this big deal. Oh, we're turning CERN on, we're turning CERN off, we're doing all, kind of stuff. It seems odd, right? Like they're all over the place, the particle accelerators. There's small ones, there's bigger ones, there's all kinds of, oddities around them. But they're sort of, the idea is that the particle accelerators create nature, or what we call nature, right? If I'm understanding the way, I've done several shows with them.
And this is all these people? I'm going to have to check them out.
Hundreds. I mean, they've learned a lot from other people and whatnot, but their narrative, and they have a lot of really interesting graphics. And I know lots of people disagree with them, and I don't know who's right about what, but the way that they've laid out a lot of this information resonates with me on a level that some other information doesn't, and that doesn't make it right because I think so. It's just I'm telling you about something that I think is interesting, right? So I don't know if people turn CERN on or not. I think CERN might turn, it's something else activates CERN, and then the people that work there study it or conduct experiments on top of it or try to see sort of what they can piggyback onto it, or can they figure out how to make it do something specific at a certain time or not? Like, I don't think we understand it, right? And one of the things I figured out, and I've probably told you this before, but I think it's possible that there's either a particle accelerator or a nuclear. I know that there used to be a nuclear reactor. I know that there is a nuclear reactor in Chatsworth, but I think there may be a particle accelerator too. And in fact, I think there's a lot of connection between particle accelerators and nuclear reactors and fusion reactors and all of that kind of stuff. But when I look at the cave paintings of the Chumash Indians in the thousands of years old cave in Chatsworth, there's a drawing of a particle accelerator. Why is there a drawing of a particle accelerator on a thousands-year-old cave painting in Chatsworth? Are you trying to tell me that Rocketdyne and Boeing are thousands of years old?
Talking about this one here?
This is not the one in Chatsworth. Right there, bottom left corner, right there. Okay, so see that linear thing of circles? Mm-hmm. They will tell you that that is a string of beads. Go look up linear particle accelerator. Type in linear particle accelerator. Go to images. Look at that. Look at that. See, it's a series. Look. Right here, bottom left corner, right? That would be a view from up top, would be the same. Okay? Look at that. Go look at a picture of CERN head on. Right? So look, get look, that's up top. See if you can get one that's like straight on. Is that right there? Perfect. Okay. So first of all, you'll notice that also looks like an eye. It looks like the iris of an eye. Go back to the cave painting in Chatsworth. Right? If you can open up, there's a bunch of them. I don't see the one that I'm looking for, but right there, right-hand side, right next to the linear, there you go.
And what do they say this is?
Well, I mean, it's just white people now saying what they think it is, right? But basically, so I think there's like a couple of possibilities, and I've gone over this, many times. People can find conversations I've had over the years on my various sites sort of about this, right? But why is Boeing, formerly Rocketdyne and now Boeing, at the same site where those cave paintings are, and why aren't people allowed to go see them anymore? Why would Boeing and Rocketdyne, who supposedly build aircraft, do it in the very rocky mountains of Chatsworth?
So what are the indigenous people there that they've been
Chumash.
What do they say?
So like the story is that these are, their beads. These are drawings of like their beads and their pots and their totems and like that. But why do their beads, pots, totems look like our technology?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you were talking about poking these third and fourth dimensional particles and, blogs of energy. I highly recommend people go watch the television series Dark, right? It was a German show, but it's dubbed in English, so you don't have to read the subtitles. There's voiceovers in English. It's on Netflix. Like, this is what I think is going on, right? And I think this is going on all over the world in many places, including Chatsworth, and including whoever wrote this obviously had some idea that wherever they grew up in Germany, this was going on too, right? I suggest people, you should watch it, Juan, and then we should do it. I would love to do a show about Dark with you.
You've told me probably for the last, how long have I known you now? Like 2 years at least. I think you've told me on numerous occasions to watch that, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But let's pause real quick, because we're talking about alternative history. We're talking about ancient particle colliders. We're talking about all this craziness. And one of my favorite things is, right, one of the things that they question throughout history is, and I'm not finding the, wow, this is crazy. So John Dee and Edward Kelly were instructed on certain garb that they needed to wear in order to interact with these Enochian entities, plasma entities perhaps. You have these ancient, I guess, priests would, going into the tabernacle, they were wearing certain things in order to protect themselves. You have Solomon with Solomonic magic, the rings, all these sigils that are almost like circuit boards in a sort of way. And one of the things that's always interested me is the idea of knight's armor, how impractical it is, how they can't even maneuver, but yet they were using it in battle. But the whole thing with Tartaria is the idea of free energy. Were these Tartarian buildings used for the interaction of these plasma entities, perhaps? Right? I mean...
So perfect. You took me right to free energy, right? So, yeah, like I think that, it's conductive in a different kind of way than the way our metered and controlled electricity is, right? And so I think it's entirely possible that, like, wearing certain things would sort of bring you into resonance with that field of energy in a way that if you weren't wearing that, you necessarily wouldn't be. But people think of free energy, like, it's weird the way people think about it, right? They're like, oh, it's energy that's free. Like, oh, we're not going to meter it, so we're not going to have to pay for it, right? It's over unity, which means it produces more energy than it takes to run the devices or whatever. And all that might be true. But what if it's energy that wants to be freed? And so when you're seeing these like things, these contorted moving plasma fields of energy, they want to connect to something that they can let themselves release into, right? One of the things that I think is going on, and it's going on quietly in the background, but I think maybe we're going to move into a scenario on the other side of the directed energy weapon that is Monday, is that there's going to be a broader experience of free energy, right? That Devil's Comet that's coming through, right, is called Pons Brooks, right? And, right, that comet is called Pons Brooks. That's the real name of it, I'm pretty sure. Look it up, because every time let's go, Pons Brooks comet is the comet coming through.
What is the Devil's Comet? Yeah, earn the name, da-da-da. Okay,
so the duo that first observed cold fusion were Pons and Fleischmann. So Pons and then the flesh of man, right? And so I am aware that there has been some shifting in energy sources, and the groups of people associated with them have been in contention with each other. But I do think that it's possible that, like, whatever is going on here on Monday that we're going to be moving from a time of resistance to free energy to more of an acceptance of free energy. And it might not be immediate. It might not be, oh, we're in a whole new world on Tuesday, right? But people can go people can go on my Friday morning dumps that I do with my friend Jeff. And sometimes they end up on a different day and then they have a different title, but it's always the dumps. And a few weeks back, sometime in the end of February, early March, we had an episode where we got into some of this stuff regarding, some of the new guard and the old guard of the energy realms, right? But I do think that something different this way comes in terms of the way energy moves through the realm. I think that on some, it's not going to be this thing where people who aren't paying attention are going to notice it, but the people who sort of are paying attention to it, right? That maybe slowly over time, people who aren't paying attention will notice, but, I think we're up for a shifting of the way things goes, and that's destabilizing for a lot of people. And some people would like to call that destabilization an apocalypse. But an apocalypse is just the unveiling of something that you couldn't see before, but now you'll be able to see. So maybe we're going to free some of the energy, and maybe some of that energy is going to allow us to see things from different angles, and realities that we insisted weren't there will become apparent.
Those are the angels.
Those are the angels.
Yeah.
Angels of light are the angels, right? If you look at when you look at the prism, when the light shines off the crystals and it creates the little rainbow, it's always in this sort of arc kind of thing, right? And then you look at the archangel and their wings, it's like a spectrum sort of light, right? Bill Donahue has a great sermon on light photon. I'll tell you which number it is because he has hundreds and hundreds of them. Bill Donahue, I think it's his 709. Bill Donahue 709 is photon light angles are angels. If you guys look up Bill Donahue's 709. And that's really interesting and informative. But yeah, I think we live in something that is understandable. They've convinced us that we're too dumb and we need them to explain it to us. Right. But that's not true. Everything is right here. The past, the future, the things that they tell us are far away, whether in space or time, it's all right here, but at a different angle. It's a different frequency band. And if it was all happening everywhere all at once, it would be too hard for us to keep track of, right? But if we look at the resources, which are people who see things differently, as giving us information about that which is here, but we cannot see, instead of putting them in a room and locking them up, then maybe we can learn to turn our head or twist the diamond just a little bit, and we can see, a few other things too.
Or the butt plug in the movie All Things Everywhere at Once.
There you go. There you go. Right?
Wasn't that the conspiracy with the chess player that he had something inserted and he was able to, I think some other weird was going on with that, but that he was able to, didn't he beat the other guy? He was able to defeat him because he was able to, I don't know, some weird stuff was going on. I think it was some Sodomic time travel type of stuff where he was able to open up his chakras.
I think a lot of times, so all the places that they say that they're doing space stuff or whatever, I think they're really doing time and dimensional, right? And so we'll think about this, because you've heard of the Sushumna or the Kundalini rising kind of thing, right? Well, that's what they say the on some level is for. It's like a form of particle acceleration, about getting something to move forward quickly and exceed the pace that it normally is. And so you're busting through, you're penetrating a membrane into a layer of the cake that you previously weren't able to. But sometimes it's pretty crude to try and do it by force. It works a lot better if you try and sort of resonate with that which you are trying to move through, right? This is a lot about frequency and vibration and defocalizing, like relaxing and allowing yourself to see what is there instead of like trying to force your way into the other room or something like that.
Relax your anus. Yes.
Relax your anus. I knew we were going to tell dick jokes. I didn't know we were going to get into butt plugs and all of that kind of
that's
stuff.
What I asked the crowd as soon as I stepped up on stage. I asked them all to relax their to let my set penetrate deep within the bowels of reality. And yeah, no, that's interesting. Did you want to touch on the cosmic shot before we left? Because I know we've covered a lot of.
We have this system that likes to collect our bodily fluids.
Yes.
Right. So like our body is like a great processor of information. Right. And so like maybe there's a lot of people who will pee on their garden so that their vegetables, or they'll put some of their hair or their blood in their soil so that the vegetables will read that information and then sort of produce the level of nutrients that they need for their body. Like there's
what?
You've never heard of this? People who yeah. Right. I mean, there's all kinds. I mean, you can get in. Did you ever listen to Andrew Norton Weber and the whole thing with Orin therapy?
No.
Right.
Andrew
Norton Weber. He talks about distilled water and drinking your, right. But basically about how your body sort of records on your excrement, what it has, what it needs, all of that kind of stuff. And then if you give that to some intelligent being, whether that is yourself or some other intelligent being, then there's a secondary layer of information. You can sort of alter things to fill in the holes or the blanks or whatever it is, right? So, yes, I think we should consider when we are the person you choose for a partner, you're doing sharing all your files on your computer with them, right? And then also letting those files decide to make other information packets on their own, right? Kind of thing. So, this is important. Our bodies are important. Back to the beginning where we started. Our bodies are important. How we take care of them is important. If we want to be able to use them as the highly tuned machines that they are to produce the best sort of read on the information, we need to take care of it. And we need to interact with other people who are also taking good care of well-oiling their machines, right? And, we can do more things then, but also starting to look at alternative explanations for some things that we think we know the reason for, right? And this gets into territory that some people get uncomfortable when I talk about this, right? But if we just shift our perspective a little bit on the sort of, they have, there's all these pedophiles, right? And there's all these and they're gate kind of stuff too. Well, why else would, a control system be interested in doing things with, aside just from the fact that maybe they're sick or they're evil or they're cruel, right? If are these pockets of information that they can extract stuff from and use that. And this gets back to fusion reactors and particle accelerators. I found myself on some information that they're using custom strands of DNA to power fusion reactors. So if there's some people that produce information with their body that can create a tremendous amount of energy or power or torque or acceleration or whatever it is. So think about this. If there's DNA out there that can power a fusion reactor and you want to know who has it, what would be better than getting everybody to swab their stuff and not be able to go to work unless they turned one in, right? And, on some level, right, how there's these ideas that before the age of 6 or 10 or 12 or whatever, they have an open imagination. Maybe there's something different about getting access to their before that window closes, right? That is what that is about. That doesn't make doing things to okay, but that is different than we're evil and we hate. And so when we start to understand, like, and you'll see this when you watch Dark, how important how important young people were to what was going on at the nuclear plant, right? And yeah, sure. Do there sometimes end up some people who get carried away with themselves and do start doing things just for shits and giggles? Of course. And then you can blame everything on them, a la Larry Nassar or whatever sick person or whatnot, right? But if there's, there's all kinds of things that could be sort of afoot here. And we should stop immoral things from happening when we witness them, and we shouldn't do them ourselves. But we also should not assume that we know all the time why people are doing what they're doing, because when we assume that it's one particular thing that we fixated on, we might go looking for them in the wrong place, right? And that doesn't mean it's okay. I don't think it's okay to do anything to someone without their permission, right? But if you're looking for someone who's like outside of the law and doing something horrible and terrible to a child because they're a pervert, rather than looking for them in a laboratory where they're testing to see if this person contains the genetic algorithm that, unlocks some quantum mystery since, the beginning of time or whatever, like it still maybe doesn't make what they're doing okay at all, right? Like, I don't like this idea, but the lab at Boeing is a lot different than, some underground cave, although they're both underground. And so maybe this is where some of the lore comes from about, things in underground bases and whatever it is, right? So, and I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but there does seem to be these group of people who since the beginning of time are really interested in the genetic material of other people for whatever reason. And they will go to any length to get it. Right. And some of it seems sick, but some of it seems like science, and understanding the difference between the two can give us information about how the world really works. And also, like, we need to develop the morals and ethics inside of ourselves to know, like, what the appropriate limits for ourselves, right? Like, there's some things I want to know how the world works. And also there's some things I'm not willing to do no matter what to get that knowledge, right? And in my experience, the people who have morals and ethics are not barred from knowing how the world works. It might just take them a little longer. But when they get there, right, they're going to be able to wield that knowledge much more responsibly than the people who cheat to get there.
Yeah, I don't have what it takes either for the real secrets of the secrets. I've read what might need to be done. I don't have the flexibility, but that's just what I read in a book one time. Okay. So, right. Wow. This is crazy. I'm going to check these people out. This angelic particle matrix. Is that the YouTube channel?
YouTube channel is FPV Angel. I haven't checked in a while. You can also, I have a couple of interviews that I've done with them on my channel, publicly available on YouTube, because I think their work is so interesting. I always end up putting them out. And so for people who've not looked at it before, it might be easier for them to listen to me interviewing them than to just jump in on their channel and try and figure out what they're talking about. I think I have, what I'll do? I have 2 or 3 that I've done with them. I'll send you over the links so you can post them in the show notes so people can go look. Yeah. And those are good overviews. And if it, that information resonates for some people and for other people, it doesn't, right? It's just, for me, when I sort of grokked
it makes sense to me what you were saying.
I grokked what they were talking about. I started to have more immediate synchronistic metaphysical experiences in my local environment, right? Because it's about coming into resonance with your local particle accelerator. If the particle accelerator closest to you is creating the nature that you live in, then being in resonance with it, right, makes your life harmonious. And when you're in a harmonious state of being, the world unfolds itself to you. Whereas if you don't understand what is creating the reality around you and you're just trying to impose what you think you know on top of that, you sort of find yourself at war with reality.
Well, I just found my local particle accelerator is not too far away. It's in Melbourne. Let's go knock on their door and ask some questions. Just have a couple questions.
I go with you.
So yeah, it's called the, let's see here, high energy particle physics, and they are in Florida Tech. So yeah, gonna be paying some people a visit here.
Well, I'm gonna come a knocking.
Yeah, to ask them what's going on here. Have they unlocked the secrets of the universe?
Particle physics, plasma physics, light and sound, like people who are into understanding optics and like video and audio, right? Like sound systems. Like I think this is much more, I think how we're going to experience other realities is through manipulation of light and sound rather than like we're traveling somewhere far. I think that travel, the experience we perceive as travel happens when we excite our audio and visual receptors.
There's actually a few here in Florida. So FSU has another one too. They have a linear particle accelerator. And
linear ones, there's the circular, the ring particle accelerators. I don't know if there's only ones that circle this way or if there's also ones that circle this way. Like in my visual field, when I've done some remote viewing, I've seen something that looks like that. I don't know if it's a particle accelerator or something else, right? But particle accelerators are fascinating. So are fusion reactors. Right? There's all different kinds of fusion reactors. They have interesting names. They might be what we think of as being spiritual entities, right? Like, time and history is not the way we think it is. It's like an omnidirectional arrangement. And sometimes if you change your perspective, then something begins to make sense.
Yikes. Well, I'm going to visit these people here after we get off the podcast to see if they've opened up.
You tell them Emily sent you. You heard about them from FPV.
They'll open right up like, oh, yes, come in. So, Emily, this was amazing, as always. We literally had... I love
talking to you.
We just jumped on. We didn't...
no plan.
We picked a date, and we're like, here, okay. And then literally before I hit record, I was like, I have no idea what we're talking about. But we did. It was great. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you once more for the new people tuning into my show, new listeners, all that good stuff that haven't heard you before?
Emily Moyer on YouTube is like the entrance to the portal. Patreon.com/Off-Planet Media. EmilyMoyer.locals.com, Rockfin.com/Emily Moyer, EmilyCMoyer.com, just whatever. You'll find me. I'm talking all the time. And hopefully I'll be back here talking again with my friend Juan sometime soon, and you can come visit him over at my house too.
Yes. And as always, everybody, this was Emily Moyer. Make sure to follow the show on social media at the Juan on Juan Podcast, TJOJP.com, all that good stuff, 407-476-4606. Let us know if you've seen any plasma entities, angels, demons, whatever it is. Call in, leave us a story, leave us a message, all that good stuff. Make sure to check out chosenjuan.com. Get your pledge for issue 2 of the Chosen Juan. And I think that's it. As always, everybody, catch you on the next one.